watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning at NTV, and we said that the discussion today will be with the former president of the Forum for Democratic Change, Dr. Kizza Besigye. He's in studios with us, and yeah, I'm not going to be alone. Actually, I have Chamagero because Omuntu once is
absolutely
must be represented
without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Doctor, good morning and welcome to NTV as always.
A very good morning to you, and always a pleasure to be here. Good morning to all of you out there, and I hope you had a good night.
Okay. Doctor, I think in light of our conversation, for those who would like to be joining us online, it's how COVID-19 or the coronavirus will influence the 2021 elections. Already we're seeing the whole scientific campaigns and scientific election discussion. Yes. But since we're discussing also COVID, Doctor, perhaps to start there, the Minister, Dr. Ruth Acheng, you actually tweeted and said that you believe the Minister Acheng's explanation makes clear that her rules aim at restricting political rallies but not controlling the spread of COVID-19. You actually believe that? You're saying it's more of a ploy on this end?
No, I was just commenting on her
explanation,
response,
yes.
because she said it's not true. She was not
holding a rally.
She was launching masks. The question was not what exactly she was doing. The question was whether what she was doing was in compliance
with the SOPs,
with her own rules. Because all these rules that we have been following or compelled to follow are rules she has signed on to control the spread of the virus. Yes. So the question was, what she was doing, was it in line with that? And secondly, that she was doing what she was doing in an area where she has already declared herself to be a candidate. Yes. So what she was clearly doing was with a crowd of people. Doesn't matter what it was that she intended to do with the crowd, but it was a crowd that was not following in the slightest way, including herself. She was not putting on a mask. She was involved in a procession with all kinds of branches, and then in this public gathering where there was no social distancing whatsoever, no masks, and that was the question. Why was she involved in an area where she has already declared she is going to be a candidate? So very clearly, her concern cannot be the spread of the virus. The concern, if that was sent, because if there is anybody in Uganda who would be most concerned about those SOPs, it should be her who has issued those instructions. So the fact that where her political interests rest, these can be.
Do you believe this demotivates the rest of the country in following these SOPs and act like this? I mean, it wasn't intended, obviously.
Well, the intention
or
is...
intended to be seen, or intended to be done.
The intention is a totally different subject. But what clearly this means is that, if you, the person who is espousing, who is championing something, show that you don't believe in it, I mean, why would I believe in it?
Someone in Chikuba would absolutely agree with you on that.
So clearly what she did, at least from a professional point of view now, wearing my hat of being a medical worker too, was extremely unprofessional and most unfortunate. And what really is even more unfortunate is that she hasn't seen it. Because if she had said, well, I was overtaken by emotion. Maybe I am extremely sorry that this happened. Should never have happened. I'm ashamed of it. If she had,
I think the magician joke I was trying to explain
We
this
would have
morning.
moved away.
if she had been contrite and shown that what she did was absolutely wrong,
Yes.
that would have been a different. But she hasn't even
Noticed
gone that
that.
direction.
Doctor, having won a professional cap now as a doctor, do you believe as a nation will be in position to handle any other strain that comes post-COVID-19? Or has COVID-19 brought our structures into question, especially the healthcare?
Well, I did point out actually at the beginning of this pandemic that you see how a country responds to a pandemic. Whichever country is determined by three things. One is the level of political capital that the governance of that community has, which is extremely important in influencing how people behave. For example, you've seen the reason countries impose measures and they are rigorously followed, even where there is no enforcement, there is no police, but
Yes.
when you say this is the best thing, everybody knows you are acting in their best interest and they will follow it without enforcement. That depends on the capital that those social capital that those who are governing have with the governed. Then, of course, the other issues are the healthcare system itself, the strength of the healthcare system, and then the state of the people themselves. But the point of the social capital, is the one which is most relevant here. You're asking, will in future people,
Be in position to
be in
handle that strain?
position? So I think first of all, we started at a very low point, because what is social capital? Social capital is the whole question of people feeling part of what you are doing. That they are participatory, that they
And you don't believe that was actually there in the beginning?
No, of course
More
not.
than it is
Of course
now?
not. That's one of the biggest challenges of our governance. And that's why we have to rely on people, with the
In
truncheons.
the
And,
implementation,
that you cannot, so that is the biggest challenge.
Okay.
That, people don't feel that you are acting
In their good.
their
The
best interest. They are part of what you are doing. You have that trust, between you and the people. And so we started at a low point. Now, what followed? What followed was that these rules were then imposed.
Yes.
Imposed ruthlessly, as you saw. Women trying to sell their bananas on a basket, being whipped, and those pictures went all over the place, and people cringed. But then what followed? What followed was that everybody was locked up, except the trucks that were the most affected by the virus itself. Those were not affected by curfew. They were not affected by restrictions of movement. They could move 24 hours anywhere.
Because the economy had to keep
But
running.
is there
Fine,
is there
fine.
no point to be that's commendable at all in this in
this.
how this has been taken over, the SOPs, the guidelines, the lockdown, any of the phases? Because I understand even I would be annoyed at how the truck driver situation was. But from the beginning, is there no point that's commendable? Really?
But it depends on what you asked was whether in another pandemic
we would be able to do better.
Whether people would be, following. This is what I'm asking.
Over time,
if
yes.
you want to ask whether there are some things that...
doctor.
Yes. So I'm just responding on why...
Over time.
On why people lose confidence
Over time.
in what you are doing. So people are locked down, and they are locked down in the belief that you are trying to restrict.
It's for their good.
Yes, so that you can detect where this virus is coming from.
It is a war.
You know.
It is a war. That's what the president said.
Yes, you are detecting. Keep quiet. Let's detect.
Cover.
And then the people who are most vulnerable, who are most at risk of spreading it, those are not affected by stopping. They are not affected by any time. They are moving 24 hours all over the place, stopping at every junction.
Doctor, you are alluding that in the next generation, if we ever have a strain,
we're in trouble.
The population won't trust the government.
As I said, even before the strain, the trust of government is important. And I told you that even that before COVID was very, very low.
Okay.
And for many reasons, if you pick a newspaper every day and the top is either corruption, money being stolen, people's money being stolen when they have, serious problems that they can't take their children to school, they have no health care, every day they see money being stolen, they see, abuse of rights, you find, people being evicted violently from their land and so on and so forth. So these are matters which progressively affect how people respond to government. Now, regarding the pandemic, as I said, first of all, that whole question of whether there was seriousness
at the start,
right from the start, in stopping that spread, because what is being done now, hopefully, could have been done even then, to check people at the crossing points before they get in. In fact, they were checking them, but they would not wait. They were simply, they wouldn't say, you hold on, you get your results, and we know that you are not spreading the thing. So that was, but even more seriously, when you lock down people, they are no longer able to work, especially in very, very vulnerable societies like ours, where people earn hand to mouth. They have no savings, they have nothing. Then you are the guarantor of their security. Security is not about just physical security, that somebody is not beating you, but including social security.
Yes.
That people have food, that people have what to use to survive. So if you lock down people, you must have a plan of how they survive under that lockdown. So the whole question of food, you are telling them, wash your hands every so often. How do they get the water to start with? Clean water is expensive. So you have not talked about how they can get water, soap, all these things. So if you compare what was happening here and what was happening in other countries, you would see the stark difference, because those were the first measures people, government installed. So it was not, that's the whole question. What was it intended for? What was the objective? So you have locked down people, they have no food, they have no water to use even in sanitation, they have no soap, they have no, you are ruthless with, kibokos and so on and so forth. So that is what really undermined. And then, of course, in our case, the pandemic exposed the weaknesses in the government, that there was no food reserve anywhere, not even one bag, that there was no reserve of money in case there is a problem like this, not a shilling in the central bank reserve that we had to start from going to borrow. So all this money that they were fighting over, the 20 billion of parliament and so on, was all money they had just borrowed. 600 million euro which was borrowed to deal with the pandemic. And the question then is, how was that money used? Was it used to deal with the people's problems, or it wasn't? And these are the matters of trust, how people respond to what you are doing subsequently.
And part of building trust also is in implementation. I think we've always said the government is flouted for having on paper great ideas but never implementing. Did COVID and how they were implementing the SOPs, or even the money that came in, the money that was asked for and all of that, did the implementation even push that lack of trust further down?
Yes, but even before you implement, even just the plan.
The plan,
because
the structures.
when you implement a plan. What was very clear up to now is that there was actually no plan. This is
crisis management.
Yes, because you see, the pandemic, as we have been saying all this time, is not a 1 month, 2 months thing.
With us.
It's with us for the long haul. So even measures like a lockdown are temporary measures.
Yes.
They must be to achieve very clear objectives, which once achieved, the lockdown goes away. Now, you cannot ask anybody what were those objectives. That's how we are now in a permanent lockdown. What needs to be done for students to go back to school? What needs to be achieved for shops to open? We have now a crisis of shops. You know, they say malls can open, these ones can open, the other ones can open. You wonder, what is it? What are the deliverables of the lockdown that once you achieve, then you can go back to the new normal? The lockdown was supposed to prepare for a new normal. What is the new normal, and what is your plan of getting to it? Once schools go home, from day one you have closed the schools, what starts into action until they come back?
Speaking of new normal, if traders are getting back into things, trying to figure it out, transport, I mean the taxis, I was trying to figure things out. Everyone is trying to figure out a new normal, including the same government, which, as you said, but when it comes to the elections, would you have said, as everybody tries to figure out a new normal, this is something that should have been halted in the first place?
So you see, all these are activities that are part of a plan. Just like you are planning for social sector, you know, how to manage education in the new period, how to manage the economy in the new reality. You also must have a plan of how to manage governance in the new normal. So, but that plan needs to be there. It needs to be transparently made. And you see, why we talk about governance being at the center of everything is that it impacts all. Governance impacts the economy, impacts politics, impacts health, impacts. And the question you should ask, which regrettably, most of our people don't seem to ever focus on, is what's wrong with the governance. Because there are fundamental questions of governance that must be engaged with by our people, by Uganda, which, if not solved, whether there is COVID or no COVID, you will continue to have massive problems in the economy, in the social sector, and so on. You see? What are those problems of governance? It is how is power exercised? Who exercises power? Who has power? And how is it being exercised? So the question is, you see, even quite often I ask even, you know, intellectuals, what is power? And you see people fidget because they have not thought about, people talk about power, even, you know, many now people are saying our power, people power.
We are grateful that we have someone who has always run for power.
Yes, but you ask them, but what is this power? Our power, people. What is that power? And, you know, I crystallize power into about 5 elements. The most critical one for us, 4. The first one is control of wealth. control of resources.
Yes.
2, control of decision making. Who makes the decisions? 3, control of implementation of decisions. Take an example of a home. Who exercises power in the home controls the wealth of that home, makes the decisions, will choose when dinner will be served, will decide who visits, who doesn't visit, will decide, makes the decision. 2, implements. If he decides, you know, I am selling this goat, that goat will be sold, and will decide where it will be sold and for how much. So implementation. 4th, judgment, adjudicates, deciding who is right and who is wrong. These are the elements of power. The 5th one is the spiritual power, which I would prefer to engage with separately, because that is at least
That is
not
complex.
Yes, but these 4. So, who has these 4 elements has the power of the state. Who controls the wealth? Who controls the decision making? Who controls the implementation? Who judges? Now the question is,
Oh, I thought you were actually answering that. I thought you were answering on who you believe has
yes.
the
So
power.
who has that power
Yes.
in Uganda? Now, first of all, Uganda as a country was not formed by us, Ugandans. It was formed by foreigners. Who destroyed, yes, this
Okay.
is very important.
Okay.
Who destroyed our own nations by force of guns and took all power within Uganda.
So, Doctor, you're
All
alluding-
power in Uganda until 1962 belonged to the Queen of England. We were subjects of the Queen of England. How was that power taken? By force. That power, which was taken by force, has not returned to the people of Uganda.
It's still in Britain.
still exercised by force. We struggled and pushed out the British, but the guns the British used to take that power from us still control it.
Doctor,
And if you want to know that they still control it,
yes.
since independence, no leader in this country has taken over state power except by use of guns. We have never said we no longer need you as a leader and anybody goes away. What takes people away are bombs. What brings people into government are bombs. It means people have no power over who governs them. These are very, very critical.
Doctor,
these
we
are very, very
understand your
critical.
position,
Yes.
but we need to have this conversation.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you said that, because now we need to probably get into the intricacies. Tamago and I were discussing the FDC itself.
Oh, yes.
And the hierarchy of power. You might have that one question before I ask him that.
Doctor, with all this said and done, we're going into the scientific election. That's a conversation we're going to have. But Doctor, are you standing for president in 2021? There is a lot of, just 2 days ago in the Daily Monitor, part of the leadership in FDC, they are not sure.
Yes,
You're
you
always
see-
a latecomer when it comes to
And there's an assumption that you are the one who holds the power.
You're the one who holds the powers of who stands for FDC.
Yes,
They have
yes.
said they have all these people who have come through. They're saying that we're
who
going
could
to stand.
possibly be great leaders.
So
Yes.
first of all, I have told you what power
Yes.
is.
Now we know the four elements.
I
of
have told you what mediates power, coercion.
Yes.
So first of all, to dispel any suggestion that I wield power in FDC, that I am the decision maker of FDC.
You're not.
Invisibly.
You're not.
So-
Invisibly.
so because these are the issues, you see,
Of course.
which people need to interrogate. That's how people need to analyze. So if I wield power, what tools do I have to help me to wield that power?
Let's go by perception.
Because-
let's go by perception.
Forget
You are-
about perception.
Perception
Because
is
it's
very
public
key.
opinion.
It's very key. Perception is very key. You have been the voice of opposition for so long.
Yes.
the perception.
Well, opposition is not FDC, so I have.
But you
all
have,
the-
you
largest-
have,
so I have all
it is
the.
the
So I
largest
have all the
opposition
power of opposition.
it is the largest.
for
It
that.
is.
So,
It is
yeah.
the largest opposition political party, and if there's a hope for unity, which is what he was trying to ask.
But anyway,
shouldn't you be part of that conversation?
anyway, I can respond to
Yes.
to that. But the question was, am I going to be a candidate? I think that's what you're asking. So, the reason I dwell on the dynamics of power is, what is an election? What does an election do? An election is a process through which people choose leaders and give power to them.
Yes.
Has FDC reached out to
So,
you?
first of all, they choose leaders and give
Them power.
them power. So it starts with
The people.
those choosing, having the power to give. Are we together? If you have no power, this is the question. These are all very related
So Ugandans
concepts.
have no power to give.
They have never given it to anybody, have they ever?
So why are
Has
you
any of our leaders?
and yet you have been on the ballot before.
Yes, and that's
And
why
you've
I'm
been in court
Yes, you've been
challenging
on the
some
ballot.
elections.
Yes, precisely.
Yes, you've been
But-
on the ballot
yes.
to seek for power which people don't have.
Don't have.
anymore.
Yes, yes.
What are you seeking
You
for
see,
then?
you see, if you followed what I was telling people in the 2016 elections, all over the country, I was telling them that I have not come to ask you for a vote.
Because you don't have the power?
No, I was
Because they don't have the
because they don't have a
Okay.
vote. I was telling them I have not come to ask you for a vote because you don't have it. You have never had it. I have come to ask you that together we fight and get a vote.
With the same coercion that you spoke
You
of
talk about
in the
earlier?
beginning?
Now, there are modes of fighting,
Okay.
but it's fighting. Power which is grabbed from you will not be begged and it comes back. You have to fight for it. These are very fundamental questions of state building. Nowhere in the world did people become free by just saying, you see, you have really repressed us for
over the years
for far too
Yes.
long.
Of course you have to fight for it.
Have the voters understood that as every time you've had that conversation?
Yes,
The voters, have they
yes,
understood
yes,
that
yes.
it's not for begging, as you
Yes,
called
yes,
it?
yes, yes. How else? So, the power you attribute to me.
The one we lack as voters.
No, you are saying I have power in FDC. I have power
The
in the
invisible
opposition.
hand.
I do not hold any instrument of coercion. I cannot force anybody to respond to what I'm saying. I have no power to do that. I have no instrument to do that. I can't force people to accept what I am saying. I have no resources to use to
But the structures of
influence.
FDC
I,
are still
So
I have no
what-
resources to use to influence. Because
The people.
again, as I said, whoever has power controls
the resources.
the resources. And resources can be used to also get compliance of what you want to be
Okay.
done. That's the whole idea of patronage. I don't have all that.
Yes.
So the only reason you say perception is that I have some influence is because what I say people relate to. They say, oh,
So, Doctor, do you
I
believe
think what he's saying
it relates?
I'm actually
touches
interested. I'm
me.
interested in knowing what if you talk to your voter. Even you said even in 2016 and even the years before, you talk to your voter and you say you don't have the vote, you don't have the power. So I'm not here to ask for that. I'm here to say that you and I can't beg, but we need to figure out a way to
Absolutely.
to earn
Yes,
some power.
absolutely.
And when I said, is it coercion? You said there are many other ways.
Of to
Yes,
fighting
yes.
this?
What
It's-
are some
in
of
other
those
words, so let me tell you what I believe.
The way you believe, yes,
The process of regaining that power.
and not begging for it.
And not begging. Begging will never bring it.
Okay.
You know, these people saying, tukoye, you know, You can coa until you die, nothing will change. You must do something.
Okay. So what are those ways?
So the first one is to be awake to your situation, to be conscious of the situation in which you are. Because part of the reason our people were dominated for 70 years by the British is not because the British were holding guns at the doors of every citizen. No.
It's mind.
They controlled their mind. They control your mind and make you believe that, you know, there is nothing you can do. You know, this is your situation, and you know, accept it, and maybe God one day will help you, and you know. So the domination of the mind has gone on for a very long time, that people now feel that that's their normal state. You know, you hear somebody saying, me maskini, what can I...
The mindset is something you don't change in a short time.
No,
Because
no,
as
no.
you said, it takes a long time
it takes,
to wire the mind that way.
But it's critical. And that is, you know, some people ask me, if you know people have no vote, why do you go into an election? It's a wonderful opportunity to convey that message.
Is that one of the ways you're changing our minds, by you being on the ballot?
No, so this is
The mindset.
and this is why I'm saying the communication.
Okay.
Because why do you think when I go to a radio station, in 10 minutes, anywhere outside Kampala, by the way, whether in Jinja, whether anywhere, within 10 minutes, the police would have come to pull me out of the radio station. Within 10 minutes. No law, nothing. I'm sure you've all seen
So
this.
you believe, yes.
Why? Why is that? Why are they saying don't hold meetings? Forget about COVID, even before COVID. Public order management. You cannot hold a meeting of more than 3 people unless the Inspector General of Police has allowed you to do so. Why? The reason is they don't want this message of awakening the population to go.
Doesn't this
Because if people's minds are awake and conscious and realize that this is slavery, we cannot tolerate this.
I want to commend you, Doctor, for having reasoned the mind and awakened up the mind of Ugandans that they can stand up and oppose what they believe is wrong. And over time, I've seen a lot of political parties and new waves coming through. Do you believe that unity is the best thing opposition can do today to make sure that this change will
so
in the country
let's
can
go
come to life?
let's go systematically. First of all, you said, what do we do to get our power back? The first
One you said is the changing
the
of the
first
mind.
one
Yes.
is conscientization. People to be awake to their situation. The second is to be organized. If you are not
As a
organized, even if you know you are, even if you are aggrieved,
And who in this case has to be organized? The voter or
the
you?
dominated, the repressed, the marginalized, the people who want to regain their control, their power. People who want to regain their power must organize. Those who want to fight to get their power must be organized. Why is the military? Why does the military of 100,000 people control millions? Because they are organized. You see, when you meet these zero DUs, you can't meet one by one in the village. They will go in groups of 10.
But isn't
they
one of
go
the-
in a line.
Doctors,
they have a commander. They have a...
Isn't one of the ways to be organized, I think, as voters, is through a leader, right? One sort of leader would be you, would be anybody else. But
So organization is about leadership.
yes,
Organization is in building a network of leaders.
Yes.
That is organization. So we must build a network of leaders from the people themselves, so that you, where you live, you are in a cell of people that want to get their power
but Doctor, I
back.
think that has already happened.
So it doesn't happen on its own. It has to be
Overtime driven.
it has to be developed. Organizational competencies must be developed and people must be organized. And it has, so the first challenge was awakening. The second challenge has been, and still is to a significant extent, organization. Both are still a challenge, but organization is more of a challenge than the conscientization.
Among the population.
Yes. So now, what does organization give us? Organization gives us the ability to speak together with one voice. It gives us the ability to act together. Now, you will understand that I am saying organization of the oppressed, of the marginalized, of the dominated, not organization of FDC according. You see, one of the lies, one of the misconceptions that we are dealing with is that there is a multi-party political system
in the country.
In the country, because parties are built, parties have two main functions. The first function of a party is to influence the formation of political will. In other words, how people should be governed. You know, ideas about how people should be governed, to create policy platforms. That's one of the.
And you're saying the opposition doesn't have that?
You see, the second one is to develop leaders to implement those platforms.
Yes.
These are within the realm, are within the area of those who have power to decide about how they want to be governed, to decide about who should govern them. If you have no power, you haven't reached that stage. The first stage you need to focus on is to get the power to afford you to do that. So the struggle we are engaged in is a liberation struggle, not political contestation of platforms.
And you believe the opposition is ready for that?
So what should not divide us now is political platforms.
Who belongs to what?
Yes, should not divide us. Whether you belong to what, whatever you espouse,
so what should be
you
uniting?
haven't the slightest chance of implementing it as long as you don't have that power. So the first is to unite all of us. That's the question you're asking.
Wow.
The first is to unite all of us, get our power back.
I think I understand what you're saying, that even if you all showed up as different political parties, because you don't believe there's a free and there's a fair playing ground for all the other parties, the first task would be to be one voice, get power, as you believe, and then see what to do next.
Absolutely.
So that means we're at that point. We're at the phase where we should, as parties, they should be coming together as a voice to get power in the first place.
So, first of all, you see, when one of the ways indeed
I think what I want to ask, is it happening in the first place today? It's not.
It's not, and it's rather frustrating, but understand why it's not. You see, people who dominate others are also not seated. They are working overtime to make sure that they maintain the domination. And they use four main things. First is, of course, the fear that it comes out of their power of coercion, of causing pain to others. The fear. They will kill me, they will imprison me, they will torture me, they will take whatever little I have, the fear. The second is the use of
money,
the wealth that comes with their power to buy support. Because everybody, they can determine who has what. And that's why you see the whole country poor, a few people very well off. So now among this sea of poverty, they can dangle, they can choose whom they can make a little bit better off. That is a lot of power, which they use even in these political parties we are talking about, so that you are not of the same mind. Thirdly, is the control of information. which we talked about earlier. You know, being, dominating
what people
what
hear?
people
The
hear.
narrative.
What
Okay.
people hear. So you find that the greatest majority of people hear that Besigye is an angry man. He's vengeful. He wants to revenge on people. He wants to, they repeat it, and wherever you see him, tear gas is coming, terrible things are happening. So they create
A narrative.
impressions. Fourthly, divide and rule. Right from the British.
And the opposition say everyone is comfortable where they
So understand that, first of all, we fought for the right to form political parties. And it's a legitimate thing that we should have freedom of association.
Yes.
But it doesn't come before, as I said, you actually have the power,
The power.
to make decisions. So, but at some stage, as part of the maneuvers of the NRM system, they said, okay, those who don't agree with us, let them go and organize from outside the NRM. NRM will continue. What is NRM, by the way? This is again what NRM, though, for those who have forgotten, because it has been here for 35 years. In 1986, I was one of those in its leadership. And I was a member of the National Resistance Army. And what put NRM into government was a proclamation called Legal Notice Number 1 of 1986. And it said, whereas on this day, the 26th of January 1986, the National Resistance Army has captured the power of state of Uganda.
captured.
Yes.
Is the key word.
Yes. Shall now be vested in the national resistance movement.
Captured.
and vested in the national resistance movement. So that national resistance movement in which power was vested still continues. In 2005, what happened, and Mr. Museveni was very forthright in saying, Tubejako, those who don't believe in what we are doing, let them go. NRM will continue. And that's why even NRM does not pretend to call itself a political party. Says it's an organization, whatever that means. But, so for it continues. Now, these ones, that little space in which to organize, which we won in 2005, is space we can use because at least it's allowed by law now. Before that space was not even there allowed by law. Now it's allowed by law. Even though allowed by law, it is stopped in practice. Because even when you say I'm a political party, I want to organize a meeting, they say you won't organize it. But it's nonetheless every space that is available. You occupy it and build from there. But you must occupy it with a realistic, with a clear view of what you are doing. Not treat yourself as a fully-fledged political party in freedom with rights, and that you are contesting NRM as a political party. And the contestation here is not between these political parties as you see them and NRM. NRM is the state.
So where's the
It's
contestation?
the state. So it's the people of Uganda fragmented in these groups versus the state of Uganda.
Dr.
NRM is the state. That's why, you see all NRM meetings, SEC, I don't know, NEC, I don't know, they are in the State House.
So it's the people. No.
The chairman.
I know we have a certain clip, but before we get to that, I know the director is calling for it. You said the organization of the other political parties is really the Ugandans, as you call them, uniting in these different voices and platforms,
Including civil society.
yes, to then, and it's versus
The state. The state.
Versus the
The
state.
captured state.
But notice one.
I'm wondering, and I think you were trying to really start explaining to it, what over time, what have these voices done and these platforms to gain the power? What have they
So
done
that
to gain
is
the
the,
power?
that
Yes,
is a
we're
very
trying to
very that
hit
is
on
a very very critical question. So
Yes.
what we have been doing, obviously I can't speak for all the others,
Yes.
but at least those of us in the Forum for Democratic
Yes.
Change, first of all, even the name Forum for Democratic Change was advised by that our mission is to fight for democratic change, to move from military control to popular control. That's the transition, military to popular control. That's the struggle of the FDC. And in doing so, we recognize the three things I told you. That first of all, we must influence people's mindsets. And during or outside elections. So we use any opportunity in the elections to achieve that.
Okay.
Secondly, to organize.
Are you organized?
Yeah, we try to the extent
the
possible to
objectives.
organize. But as I have told you, in order to liberate the country, we must not only be inward looking to look at the organization of FDC and become, you know, entranced with that this is the mission of, we must look at organization of all of us together to have the necessary, so that we, in other words, all these political parties, if they are really to be positive, to be helpful in the process of liberation, must not look at themselves in their circumscript, you know, kind of formations that, you know, we are here, we are we are FDC, DP is our rival, you know, People Power is our rival. You know,
if anything, they're not, you're not rivals, actually.
No, we must appreciate that we are, if we are motivated by liberation,
yes.
we are not only fighting for the same cause, but it's imperative that to get that cause, we link up.
So you were talking about how FDC is maneuvering to actually
organize
change.
Yes.
You said the mindset, the organization,
Yes.
Where you can,
Yes.
the organization.
To the all of it is to the extent possible.
Whether
it's
even the
influence,
mindset, yes.
It's to the extent possible.
And to be honest, I do believe what you have said. And
So now
yes.
now this brings me to the question, which is,
if
you
you're
know,
going
all
to
over,
stand for
are you
president?
going to stand? So understand that my standing in elections has therefore been advised by this mission.
Oh, of FDC.
So the answer would be yes.
Not
then.
only of FDC, but of
The cause.
Yes, it's the mission that took me even to the bush to live in a free country where I have equal rights, where I have equal opportunities with everybody.
That hasn't changed. That's still the mission.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
because
and that's still the need. There's a need for that.
absolutely, the reason I turned against the very NRM I was in is because it betrayed that. No transition happened. So the idea was that we thought those who had guns were using them against the people. So we said, let's have a people, and that's why it was called the People's Army. Let's have a People's Army. We arm the people, they fight, take over power, and make a transition from gun rule to people rule. That transition never happened. As soon as we took over power, the new guns became the new problem.
Doctor.
So if the mission hasn't changed,
Yes.
the need is still there. It means his answer is yes.
No.
So that's what I'm looking at.
First,
You're going to stand, doctor.
so first of all, understand
Yes,
this.
please.
Understand this. That therefore, elections that we participate in are not elections in which we participate with the view that there will be, at the end of the election, a transition in Kololo that, you know, we have won,
salute.
and, you know, you are handing over the instruments of power to another group. We are very aware that that is not the process through which this change will take place. The process must include the third step. I have talked about two.
What's the third one?
The third one is to fight.
How?
That is the question we have been answering. There are two ways of fighting. One is with violence, like we did in Ruero. The other one is non-violent struggle, like we are doing now.
Civil disobedience.
Yes, like we are doing now. That is, to my mind, the mode that will transfer power from those with guns to those without.
And if it's working, how far are we?
To those without guns. Now, to the extent that it has not yet happened, obviously we have not reached where we are going. But you yourselves happily gave me a feedback in this program that
There's perception.
that people's mindsets.
They think doctor is coming. And doctor is coming. Doctor, before
No. But I think I got the answer.
Yes.
I think I got
The answer is there.
No.
Doctor, before
You are
going
going
further, because of time.
You see, again, part of the problem is,
The mindset.
mindset. People having a predetermined mindset. So when
Doctor.
you tell them, say, oh, now you
I
that
got
is the answer. You.
Doctor, before you came through, we had a,
So,
we had
so
a
the
conversation
reason before we leave this question of
Are you standing?
are you standing?
Yes.
The reason even now I have not mentioned anything of the sort is that
Yours
my candidature has been used to divert or deviate the purpose of why we are struggling to myself. So rather than the struggle, the liberation becoming the issue, I have increasingly become the issue. He has stood many times, I don't know what, So that now shifts not why we are struggling, but myself. And I
Has
am
become
So
an
you think it's
individual.
deliberate?
Yes, it's of course, I told you that
Perception.
part of how those who dominate others keep the dominance is by
Controlling the
divide.
narrative.
Yes, divide and rule. So elections is one of the ways in which that divide and rule happens. Pitting, making it a contest of people, of individuals, not individuals fighting for a goal, but a contest. It's
Amongst themselves.
It's now there are 40 candidates. Who will it be? So there is a shift of focus from what the country is fighting for to Besigye. And I am not willing to let Besigye become an obstacle to the clear vision of what the country must be struggling for. I will not allow Besigye
To
to
obstruct
As
that.
an individual. There's something you mentioned.
I will not.
You said
Because I have given, don't forget,
Yeah.
first of all, I have never set out to fight for an office. Never in my life. If you trace my background, from the time I went to school till the time I finished medical school, I had never contested for any office, never occupied any office. It's not within me to seek leadership. I have many other things that I'm interested in. And this is why, people get surprised. You are president of FDC. Why are you leaving the office? But I retired. But they still say you didn't retire. You need
to listen to this. Let's play a clip of Semujung and...
before you play that clip, he said something about popularity.
Yes.
That's one of
The
the
biggest thing.
tools
Yes.
used, because if there's popularity of an idea, popularity of something,
Of the fascists.
and we won't ignore the popularity of the conversation of people power. What are your opinions on, or was your opinion on, not necessarily the man himself, I won't put you on
But
that
the
spot,
movement.
but the popularity of that conversation? Do
Yes.
you believe it works in favor of, as you said, the many people coming through the different platforms to change their power?
Especially if people understand that and divorce it from the individuals.
So for
It's
not
important.
Bobby Wine, but
Yes,
people
yes,
power.
yes.
Not Besigye, but FDC.
Absolutely. We must all realize that we are captives. And that everybody, we will not be liberated by Besigye, by Bobby Wine, by Mugisha Muntu, by any of these leaders. They are not the ones who will lead to liberation. They are not. It won't happen. It's not me. People must liberate themselves. And that must be our united message to people, that you have the capacity to liberate yourselves and take the power.
But how do you explain to
So
the
that-
average
so
voter, the average voter who cannot separate
Have
people
the-
power and Bobby Wine, FDC and Besigye?
So the whole idea of leadership is to influence. Whatever influence we have, we must use it to transform their understanding. to the correct understanding. We should not perpetuate a wrong understanding because it undermines the very objective. What if I am walking out of this place and I am run over by a bus, and there are buses, hostile buses all over the place. A hostile bus can run over me. Does that mean those who were behind the messages stop? No. It cannot be about individuals. Individuals are useful.
I was about to say, how do you...
Individuals are useful. They provide leadership.
They
they organize others. They do all these things. But at the end of the day, and among the things that leadership indeed does must be to develop leadership. So that even if you are not there, there are other leaders. That's part of the leadership. So it should never be about an individual. It must be about the actual popular objectives in this matter that we are pursuing.
That takes us to a clip about Semujung, and yesterday there's some utterances he made, and let's watch it and we can take the context to this.
We have watched on television disturbing images of Robert Senyong before he passed on. His swollen head was full of wounds. It is alleged he was battered by LDUs using gun butts in Wuyukwe. The Forum for Democratic Change demands full accountability of and for every life we have lost at the hands of local defense unit and police while enforcing the COVID-19 measures. So the FDC demands the immediate disbandment of LDUs. Individual police officers involved in killing and battering of citizens must be held individually accountable. All our colleagues have formed parties and pressure groups. They want to stay alone. And now every day you are knocking at our door. Why are you not uniting? If all the opposition wanted to unite, the first qualification is to register one political platform, and you are all in that platform. That happens in Kenya. But in Uganda, what is happening? Someone forms a party called the Auntie, and then you're asking if this, why are you not working with us? So I don't want to give Ugandans a false promise that we are now discussing there will be unity, because we are different, completely different political platforms. And let everybody be contented where they are.
Honorable Ibrahim Semujung said, we are not going to give false hope to the nation that there will be unity. You still belong to the FDC ideology, right?
Absolutely.
And he says that the FDC is not going to give false hope to people about uniting the opposition force to achieve the change we want. What do you make of this?
Well, as you know, I'm not in the leadership of FDC.
But you're a good father.
And I cannot speak for or on behalf of FDC. I have my views, which I have been expressing here. And you see what the Honorable Semujung is talking about is the contradiction that is built in the creation of parties in a dictatorship. There is a contradiction because on the one hand, indeed, for a party to be formed, you espouse ideas. You have a policy platform that you register, so you, and part of it is regrettably driven by the elites within Uganda, who, as I have quite often argued, I think are disoriented, the great majority of them. Because you find there is pressure. What are your alternatives? So these parties burn a lot of candles, writing alternatives on their social policy, their economic policy, their defense policy, their foreign affairs policy, their this policy.
When you're saying it, they have no influence.
Which is all right, you know, to have all those papers. But frankly, these are just papers that can never see the day of light because they mean nothing. You know, there are many concepts which are wonderful.
I like the word you use that these are your opinions, and the party where you still subscribe to the ideologist says that they're not going to unite with any force. But we see you with Bobby Wine left, right, and center talking.
No,
about
I think you are even putting it out of context. What I heard the Honorable Semujunganda say. The Honorable Semujunganda said that he doesn't want to give false hope that you know, the consultations that are going on.
We're going to unite.
Because the consultations are there that they will lead to. I told you also that this is not a simple matter. It's not as simple and obvious as it looks. I told you one of the things the dictatorship does is impoverish everybody and use their control of resources to rent support from individuals. And so you'll find in all these political parties a lot of rented people. Within the political parties, this is why this whole thing of Moors has been. There are many rented people within the political parties. Sometimes even the dictatorship forms its own political parties.
There's a lot of defections in there.
Sometimes the dictatorship itself forms, you know, we have 20 something now. They used to be 40. I think they have reduced to 26 or something registered political parties, some of which you have never heard of.
Oh, yes.
Farmers Party, Workers
Liberals.
Party, I don't know what, Peasants Party, you know. Now, these, if you say parties, they will come up. So, but the point I'm making is that functioning from within these formal political institutions is not easy. Making decisions to actually unite against the dictator is not entirely easy. And that's partly, frankly, why I stepped down early from the
because
FDC.
You didn't see the possibility?
No. First of all, and I was very transparent with them, I said, I think we need to organize beyond
an individual?
FDC.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, I said we need to organize, we need to develop linkages beyond just these platforms.
Okay.
And being a party leader now restricted me to functioning within and to indeed advocate the interests of a political, just a political platform. You know, so the whole question of bringing these formations together is not an entirely easy one at all. The Honorable Semujunganda is quite right. It's a nightmare to bring all these people. We have gone through this very many times.
It's so hard.
You know, the other time we spent...
TDA.
No, forget it. IPC. We spent 2 years discussing how to put up a joint, you know,
coalition
force, inter-party cooperation. Yes. And we eventually agreed. And we went to Kololo to sign the memorandum that was had been agreed upon. And at the signing, some didn't turn up. Okay. So, what the Honorable Semujunganda is saying is advised by where we have passed through.
Okay.
Now, what should not be, however, missed is the critical importance of coming together. So nobody should, lose any opportunity at working ourselves flat out to unite. It's absolutely critical in the struggle. And we can, and you see.
But in reality?
No, in reality, the people of Uganda have never been divided. In all the elections we have had, although these political parties have never united, the people have never divided. The people have always united.
So are the political leaders giving the rightful leadership?
So I told you the encumbrance of the whole idea of a multi-party political system, because we are not there. So people appreciate that. You know, the greatest supporters I have had, you know, have not always been FDC. I have had, you know, even now, you know, whom am I fighting with all the time here? It is the Honorable Lord Mayor of Kampala. He's not FDC. He's DP, or these numbers are DP, you know. But we fight together. And frankly, I trust and work even very closely with some of those who are not FDC than those who are FDC.
Okay, interesting.
So it's the struggle is a complex matter. It's not, you know, something that as you see it, so it is.
Yeah.
So I
we're
believe
pressed for time, but I wouldn't want us to leave without, obviously, from what I've gathered from what you've said, no power with people, and you've made a point to say Ugandans have never been divided based on the past.
And they will remain united.
And they will remain
I believe.
united. I'm wondering this year, getting into next year, based on what you've said, based on how you believe the voices should come together, based on the discussions, or based on what should happen, scientific or no scientific election, I don't think that's a conversation we should be having. I don't think we should be more concerned with whether we're going to enjoy the scientific or no scientific election. Perhaps I should ask you, based on what you've said and the purpose of where you've come from as an opposition and how you see Uganda today, what do you believe, be the voter, be the opposition and the leaders should be looking at most? Is it the organization? Is it the individuals? Should you be flouting individuals? Should you be flouting a message? Should you be flouting people to come on their own, and the voice this time comes from the people versus come from the parties?
From the party, yes.
What should be the priority for now?
I think two. The first
Two
is
priorities,
yes.
yes.
I think the first is again to craft, to weave a togetherness
Okay.
in the country and focus it on the problem of the need for liberation. You know, so that and that if in our minds that confusion goes away, that we are uniting to select leaders, it will make matters easier.
Okay.
And even within that crafting the togetherness, the idea that should not deter us is, you know, who the leader is. We can choose any group of people to be our leaders.
Okay.
It's not a problem. But let us weave and craft a solid front that faces gun rule.
Okay.
Not, and this is why whether there is COVID or not COVID, the problem is gun rule. We must deal with that effectively and end the second liberation. The first liberation was to send away the foreigners who controlled the guns. The second liberation is to now control the guns they left behind, subordinate them.
That's
the first priority, weaving togetherness. The second priority, the message.
Okay.
The message that what we want is that transition. And people should also be able to understand what that transition is. So we should crystallize for people what transition we want and what it means. That, you know, we shall craft again equitable rules now coming from the people, you know, because even when you talk about a constitution, who makes a constitution? It's the person with power. If people have no power, they have no way of making a constitution. And that's why those who have power change it whenever they want. You know, you saw what happened in Parliament here. So once people win power, they should know what to do. First, to use that power to have a structure of its management, a new constitutional order. Two, to now rebuild state institutions that are free from capture, that are controlled by the people.
The people.
So that if you say you have an independent institution, for example, Bank of Uganda. Do you think our Bank of Uganda is independent now? The Constitution says the bank shall only be under the direction of any person or authority. Is that the case? You know, people order the governor to release tons of money, and he has no way of.
So you were saying the priority of the message.
So the second, I'm now talking, the message, which should include that it's transition from gun rule to people rule, and we crystallize what that transition is, so that people fight knowing where it ends, and that at the end of the day, all this is about changing our lives. Because if we then, people control the resources, it means that they can have quality education. It means they can have quality health care, because that's where the money will go, and that they will put in place measures that will ensure that no one is stealing their money, and that it serves them. So at the end of this is changing people's lives, because you see, what people have quite often not connected is the quality of their lives and the governance. You know, all these people who are fighting that, you know, our malls are not being opened, you know, this is not, the reason all that is happening, you find they don't connect the dots, that it starts with their having no power.
The population.
Yes, and that therefore the first struggle, you know, you can fight for malls to be opened and they can be opened, and then they will come and tax every cent out of your pocket. And
So, Doctor, that brings me to a question. Does our population mirror the leaders we're having today?
well, as the saying goes, a people really get the leadership they deserve.
So currently, the leadership we
deserve
have,
who we have.
the one we have today,
Is that what that's what we deserve? You know, we now deserve the NRM. That's what we deserve. If we organize better, it will disappear in no time. And that's what we spend our time doing.
Of the two things you said, one was the organization to go in one direction, and two was the other priority was the message has to be clear. That it's is it a transition?
Yes,
a transition
it
message.
must be a
And
transition.
people must understand this message.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they must understand that NRM and all this stealing and so on will not just go away. We must grab it and take it away.
So as we end, do you still believe that to do those two, we don't need an individual? I know leadership can be many things outside the individual, but for now, to put the message out and to organize in one direction, you don't believe it will take someone like Dr. Kizza Besigye?
yes.
No, first of all, as indeed you realize, we are not short of leaders. That's why we have all these organizations.
Yes.
Everyone has a leader. But we can, you know, once we focus not on these leaders occupying an office, but achieving a bigger goal, we can agree. Even, you know, why do you think that people even, you know, decide that this table is their God? And it becomes, you know, so it's not, the magic is not in who. The magic is in the unity of purpose. If in our minds we are united that we must free Uganda, we can choose you.
So you're saying if
we
you
can even choose you, even if you have
Yes.
never been in politics. We say this will be our rallying point. And let us all fight to free ourselves, provided we have agreed on what happens once we are free.
So to make it
Okay.
clear, we're not yet, that's the third, so we're not yet there at picking who it is, because you're saying that's the easy part of all of this. You're saying we need to get the message right,
Yeah.
rally in the same direction, because
And then
picking the
getting the other
individual
person.
is the easy
No,
part.
no, it's not. It's,
Suddenly,
yes, once all these are no. Once
Once all these are clear.
Once all these are clear, it is the easy part. Yes, it is.
So we're not at that point.
No, that's what we are working towards.
But we're not yet
if we
there.
were there, it would
So
have
we're at
emerged.
are we at message point, or are we at weaving into the one direction point?
No,
The message, I think, has been clear for a long time.
no, it's not. It's not, and that's part of the
So
confusion.
what have we been doing for the longest time?
It's the message is not clear because, in fact, the greatest confusion is to think that we are looking for a leader to choose a leader to replace Museveni without changing the system, without ending the gun rule. Museveni can also run under his bus. You know, the problem is not just the problem, as I have said, starts way back. Gun rule. Museveni will go. Already his son is warming up. You know, he will come. Maybe he will come. He's already general. Maybe some other people will come. It's not about the individuals. We must simply subordinate the guns. Make guns our servants, not our masters. So once that is clear, once it is clear that to achieve that we need to unite and project that message, then whom we unite around should be an easy thing to achieve. And you know, I think there is a lot of work going on. This time we are not, and I think it's been unfortunate that in previous attempts to work together, it's been conducted in media and the public arena in which all kinds of things interfere. But I think a lot of work is going on in that direction, and I'm quite hopeful.
Well, this could be my last question to you, Doctor. You're now, the other day you addressed the media with Bobby Wine about uniting to the same, weaving the populace to the same direction. Come 2021, we're going for the scientific elections, as they have been dubbed. You've always castigated and, you know, condemned them the strongest time possible. Coming to 2021, Bob Wine is very clear. He's saying he's going to run for presidency. Are you going to support him?
Well, this is part of the conversations that we are talking about, because I hope, gone far enough in explaining the concept of 2021 and the whole idea of a presidency. And by the way, on that, we are in complete agreement with the Honorable Chagulanyi on what the dynamics of the power is and what it takes to change it. We are in complete agreement. And that is why that united forces of change indeed was united to fight, to rally people to fight for their right, to regain their influence in the country, and not to beg Saba government here to Yambe, you know.
Thank you, you've answered my question.
And well, I am very optimistic. I'm very optimistic, in spite of you know, all the kinds of confusing messages, many of them deliberately cast out by the dictatorship. I'm very optimistic that the people of Uganda are forming themselves to a critical stage where there will be a watershed. I think the watershed is there anytime.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kizza Besigye. It has been quite a great, interesting conversation. Online, a couple of you have been on. Medad Mugume, you asked a question. He has actually answered to it. A couple of those who have tapped into. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Doctor, thanks for taking some time off your busy schedule to come and have a conversation with us. Flavia. Yes. Are you now comfortable?
I think I'm not going to have perception rule today's interview. But at least I took out his message. I think I understood that, which is very key in what he's answered. If you don't take out anything from today's interview, you said there are two things, two priorities we should look at today. We shouldn't be concerned in discussing whether the campaigns are scientific or not. The message and weaving in the same direction. You can get this interview online, of course, if you're on YouTube or any of our platforms, NTV Uganda. That's it. Have a good morning.
Good morning.